need to know this. I ain't no spice.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the things the new Amy Winehouse biopic did right, as well as parts it got so wrong.
If someone has so much of something already, there's very little you can add.
Number 10. The setting. Right. Music biopics attempt to immerse the viewer in the world of the artist, creating the atmosphere of a specific time and place. We've since become familiar with 50s Memphis and 60s Motown, but Back to Black feels closer to home.
We were very fortunate to film in the real locations that Amy spent some of her life in. We really chose to explore down by the waterways, in the pubs, in sort of the quieter areas that not many people know about.
It's weird to think of a movie set in the aughts as a period piece, but that's exactly what this is. During her own era, Amy Winehouse's music went against the grain, but she was still a noughties girl, and the fashion and feel of the decade are faithfully recreated in the film.
I remember this era for not just the period, but for where it was set as well. There was quite a lot of trends happening. There were so many good bands coming from Camden. It felt like a bit of an epicenter of cool.
From the Camden pubs to Amy's family home, the Lacoste t-shirts to the beat-up ballet pumps, you can practically smell the 2000s. Many of Amy's outfits and interviews are also instantly recognizable.
Apparently the dress was initially came down to about here, and she cut it herself two minutes before going on stage. It's completely corseted. I was wearing this with 8-inch Louboutins, running for my life.
Number 9. Her voice. Wrong. Even if you've never watched an Amy Winehouse interview or seen a performance, you've probably heard her iconic voice, but you won't hear it in this movie.
I'm never gonna have Amy's exact face, so the echo chambers will always be slightly different, but it's about jaw placement and resonance and nasality versus a chesty voice.
Lead actress Marisa Abela does all her own singing, and there's no doubt she does a good job despite not perfectly sounding like Winehouse. Nevertheless, the choice has divided viewers.
I think if we'd have dubbed Amy's voice in, there'd have been a disconnect emotionally.
Amy has a voice that's irreplaceable by anyone.
While Elvis and Bohemian Rhapsody blended the vocals of the actors and the original artists, Rocket Man and Walk the Line had the actors do all the singing themselves. Every biopic does it differently, but director Sam Taylor Johnson says using Abela's vocals was all about bringing an emotional authenticity to the performance. Still, it would have been nice to hear some of the real Amy, at least during the credits. Number 8. Live performances. Right. While the voice may be different, many of Winehouse's memorable performances make up key moments in Back to Black. We see depictions of her early shows, as well as major cultural moments like Glastonbury and the Grammys.
You know, her mannerisms, her voice, her facial expressions, the way that she spoke, the way that she held herself, needed to be recognizable.
The outfits, the locations, and the music will strike a chord for fans of the star, or anyone who lived through the era. Abela even sings alongside Amy's real-life band.
I got a call to talk about the film and would I want to get involved. I generally say yes to these things because I just want to make sure Amy's represented in the best way possible.
Although the film focuses more on the artist's personal life than her musical journey, it's also a story told through her songs, with the narrative beats picked out from Amy's own lyrics. From Stronger Than Me to Rehab, a story has been crafted around her emotional life, but it's the music that sells it.
I don't write songs to be famous. I write songs because I've got to make something good out of something bad.
Number 7. Depiction of press attention. Right. We'd love an Amy Winehouse film that celebrates her talent and charisma alone, but in telling the story of her short life, it's hard to ignore her public persona.
Paparazzi would be there when we were filming scenes. So what we had to do was, in a sense, use that as act.
From Winehouse's very first taste of success, the press attention began, and the paparazzi are a tangible presence in this film. The media culture of the 2000s was not kind, and Winehouse was one of the tabloid's favorite victims, especially once her alcohol and substance use disorders began to take hold.
She was not well at all. Physically, mentally, not well.
The press emerge as one of the villains of the piece, relentlessly hounding the star and publicizing her worst moments to the world, often turning her into a figure of ridicule. It's painful to watch, especially with the knowledge of how it all ended.
And you kind of felt this incredible encroachment on your space and your psychological well-being.
Number 6. Depiction of her friends and family. Wrong. With multiple documentaries that already tell her story, including 2015's award-winning Amy, many of us will already have formed opinions on Amy Winehouse's life and the people in it. Back to Black includes some key characters, while others are excluded or presented in a different light.
We don't know the story. What we know is the narrative that was perpetuated, but we don't really know the story. If you just spent the night with Amy's family and friends like I did, you realise that there's a whole different story.
Rightly or wrongly, Amy's father, Mitch, gets a sympathetic portrayal here. Her mother and brother are only briefly seen or mentioned, while some of her closest friends and flatmates are completely absent.
You were there when she was writing the songs that we know so well. I mean, you said she loved words, and she had to get everything down first. The lyrics came first,
yes, she was a poet.
Whether this is for narrative purposes or at the request of the people concerned, you fill in the gaps. Like with most true life stories, you'll need to do some research of your own to help fill them in.
Part of the thing that made her who she was this strong sense of normality. She craved normality in her life and relationships that felt authentic and real.
Number 5, her relationship with her nan, Cynthia. Right.
It's gonna happen one of these days. Voice like yours, got to.
One family relationship that Back to Black does well is Amy's close bond with her paternal grandmother. Cynthia's style and musical taste were an inspiration to her granddaughter.
We have some of the outfits here, but I think even something as iconic as leopard was something that Nan wore a lot of that found its way into Amy's wardrobe.
Some of the movie's best and most moving moments are between Amy and her nan, whether sharing stories around the kitchen table, working on a new look, or breaking bad news. Abella and Leslie Manville bring a warmth and chemistry to their scenes together, making the end of their story genuinely affecting. Cynthia saw the beginnings of Amy's success, but not its tragic end. The grandmother and granddaughter are buried together.
They were pretty girls, I know. Just like you.
Oh, thanks, man.
Number 4, first meeting with Blake. Right. Aside from Cynthia, the most prominent character in Amy's story, at least in Back to Black, is her ex-husband, Blake Fielder Civil.
I like your tattoo.
I like yours.
You've got an eye for the bad boys, Amy Winehouse.
Sam Taylor Johnson and screenwriter Matt Greenhalgh wanted to tell the story through Amy's eyes. And during that point in her life, Blake was a huge presence. As depicted in the film, the pair met at a Camden pub in 2005 and very quickly became an item.
We just melted into each other. No embarrassment. Just felt so warm.
It's pitched as a fun, romantic scene, intended to help the audience to understand why Amy might have fallen for Fielder Civil in the first place. However, during their early moments, we also get a taste of the trouble to come, as we meet Blake's girlfriend and witness him taking illegal substances.
Probably run off with someone famous anyway.
You're my heartbeat, you're my soul, I love you.
Number 3, descent into substance use. Wrong. Back to Black paints Amy's battle with alcohol and substance use disorder in broad strokes, but fails to show the full extent of her struggles. We see one thwarted attempt to get her into rehab, but not the many that came after.
So, can we have the new updated version of Rehab, please, Amy? First time. Amy? I want the new version of Rehab.
The film shows Amy slipping into hard drug use, but leaves out the crowd of fellow users and hangers-on who enabled it. Neither do they show that Blake introduced her to specific illegal substances.
She felt torn between those two things. The guy that she really loved, but having to keep up with the consumption of substances that they both were trying to do at the same time.
We're barely witness to the disordered eating that began in her teens and left her body weakened. And although we see the beginnings of her rehabilitation, we're not shown how she was pushed back out on the road when she was on the verge of real recovery.
I think people think with Amy it was, what happened was inevitable. It was a car crash waiting to happen, and I don't think she gets enough credit. The last 3 years of Amy's life, she didn't touch drugs.
Number 2, her sense of humor. Right.
Have they tried to mould you in any way, though, if people ask you to do things to change the way you look or speak or behave?
Yeah, one of them tried to mold me into a big triangle shape, and I went, no.
Despite Back to Black's many flaws, one thing that does shine through is Amy's sense of humor. The artist's early interviews reveal her to be intelligent, engaging, and funny, with a lot of charisma and very little filter.
It's so refreshing to hear someone who isn't speaking like they've taken elocution lessons.
Yeah. They gave me elocution lessons, but they kind of
They didn't stick?
Off my back, yeah.
The film doesn't dedicate nearly enough time to Winehouse's talent and artistry, but it does convey something of her character. Marisa Abella's central performance is a highlight of the film. She captures Amy's mannerisms and her style of speaking, as well as something of her forthright humor and sense of fun. The tragedy and vulnerability is played with equal skill, but it's the joyful side of the character that gives the later scenes a real pathos.
To fully understand why the world still cares so much about what happened to her.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Romanticization of Blake. Wrong. Back to Black is a fictional movie, not a documentary. But maybe it's because it feels so recent that the romanticization of Amy Winehouse's ex-husband feels so uncomfortable. The film reduces much of Amy's life and struggles to her love for Blake and her longing to have their children.
I don't think I was put on this earth just to sing. Me. I want to be a wife. I want to be a mum.
They leave out her later boyfriends and suggest that Blake divorced her so they could be free. It is even implied that she fatally relapsed after learning he was having a baby with someone else.
We only said goodbye.
Get back here!
Fielder Civil has admitted to the toxicity of the relationship, and that maybe he wasn't an out-and-out villain, just another victim of substance use disorder. However, he's definitely not Prince Charming, and the film's take occasionally feels like it's rewriting history.
The story that had been perpetuated, or the narrative, I should say, was something that I learned quite quickly. Sam and Jack, and I didn't speak to Marisa, but they weren't interested in repeating that.
Have you seen Back to Black? What did you think? Let us know in the comments.
Oh, it's a bit upsetting at the end, isn't it? Oh, boom, boom, boom.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.